Card Tissue Holder by Share Our World.
Hi, this is Sharice at Share Our World, and today we are making a card tissue holder to take care of all of those times when you have your tissue box in the car and it turns flat and makes a mess of your tissues. This project is so that won't happen anymore. What we need for this project is oilcloth, or you could use ripstop or PUL. Oilcloth typically is the easiest to get a hold of. We also need a zipper. This piece of oilcloth is 11.5 by 8. That will make it so it'll fit a full box of tissues. The zipper, however, is a 14-inch zipper because I really like to cut off my zipper because I think it makes seams less bulky. We also need something to measure with and something to mark with. The first thing we're going to do is put in a zipper, and if you are uncomfortable using your zipper foot, there really are lots of excellent tutorials out there to use a zipper foot. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to put our zipper in, and to do that, we are going to put the right side of our zipper, which is the side with the flip, against the right side of our fabric. I want you to see that I'm making sure that there is enough to cut off on each end. So there's a little metal part on this end that needs to be well past the fabric because your scissors don't like cutting metal. And this is just really for ease of sewing, and I just like a cut-off zipper in a seam better. I'm going to clip these on. You don't have to clip them on. In fact, when I am doing fast sewing myself, I won't clip them on, but this just gives me a place to start with. And then you sew with your zipper foot across the full length of your fabric, keeping your zipper lined up carefully with the edge of your piece of oilcloth, which shouldn't be super a lot of a problem. Oilcloth is not as slippery as it seems like it's going to be. And there I have my first zipper sewn on, just like that. Now I'm going to take the second piece, and this is the important part of this second piece. I need to line this second piece up very carefully with that first piece. So I want you to see there. See, I have it lined up exactly with that first piece. Then I'm going to put clips on again. And this second piece could be a little bit more persnickety because our first piece is on here. And again, I have my fabric right side, the right side of my fabric to the right side of my zipper. Now we're going to sew this zipper on all the way down. And there we have it. My zipper is now sewn on, and my ends are pretty much lined up. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to top stitch our zipper. We're going to do this on both sides. To top stitch my zipper, I want to sew right along this edge, right here, because I want this zipper to stay out of the way. So I'm just going to sew right along this edge, pretty close to the edge. And I'm just keeping it even. You can use your zipper foot for this, but you don't have to because at this point your zipper's already in, and your regular foot should work for this. And there I have one side stitch in. I am using my 1/4-inch foot because all of these seams I'd like to sew at 1/4 of an inch. It's not that critical. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark for the slit in the top because tissues pull out the top. To do that, I'm going to find the center of my fabric and measure 2.5 inches from the center of my fabric. So I would like to measure 2.5 inches. Then I'm just going to mark it. There's my 2.5 inch mark right there. I'm going to mark it, and then I am going to very carefully turn it over and match mark it. I don't actually have to mark each side, so there are my marks. And then I am going to fold this right sides together. So when I am production sewing, when I am sewing a lot of something, I have a piece of tape that I lay out on my workstation, just like this. And I make all of my measurements on that tape, so I don't have to keep going back to my ruler. So I would make a mark here, put a 2.5 inch mark here. And the other measurement we're going to need for this is 1.25 inches, so I would put an 1.25 inch mark here. And then I would always use this as my measure. That way I wouldn't have to keep going back and messing with my ruler. It's just, and I set it right at the front of my sewing machine, right in front of my workspace. I don't set it out in here. I would set it right in front of my sewing machine in my workspace, so it would be easy. It's easy to use. The next thing I'm going to do is I am going to sew from the edge of the fabric to here, backstitch good here, and then I'm going to sew from my mark to the edge of the fabric, leaving this portion open. My seam allowance is at the 1/4 inch mark. You don't have to have a 1/4 inch foot for that. I just like to. You could do 1/2 inch. It just depends on what you feel comfortable with. I just particularly like a 1/4 inch because my sewing machine foot is a 1/4 inch. And there that is, sewn on each end, backstitched well on each side. Then I am going to unzip this because I need to top stitch this opening. And I would like you to observe that I'm very carefully making my zipper so it is on top where I can see it. That way I don't sew my zipper into this top stitch, which would be easy to do. And then, so I'll get the zip out of the way so you can see this. Now you can see my opening right there. Now I'm going to top stitch this opening. I'm just going to sew this freehand because I find it easier. But if you're worried about freehand sewing, just put a couple of clips just like this along your edge. It will hold it in place. And as you can see, when I laid this down and ran my fingers along it, it creased where it should be creased. And so sewing it isn't as hard as it would seem. And I'm going to sew it right at the 1/8 inch mark, kind of halfway, but this is definitely not a critical measurement. Sew as close or as far away from the seam as you would like. And I'm sewing around in a circle. When I get to the end of my slit, I'm going to put my needle down. Then I'm going to lift my presser foot up, turn the corner, sew that really short little bit of a seam and back stitch once because this is reinforcing the opening. Then I'm going to sew the second long side. Again, coming to back where I started, pressing it, picking up the presser foot and stitching the seam. Then I'm going to turn this back so it's right sides together. Now you have everything, all of the stitching done on the edges. Now we are going to deal with the end. And to do that, I'm going to re-zip up my zipper all the way. And then I'm going to line up the zipper with that seam that I just put in there. That seam right there. And my zipper, I'm going to line that up very carefully and put a clip. And the thing about oilcloth is you find it's not being very cooperative, you just give it a yank, and then it will cooperate a little bit better. So, lining up my seam, giving it a doing a quick clip, lining up my second seam, giving it a quick clip, and then I want to feel this. If it is feeling like there is a twist, you're going to have a twist. So you can see that it is not lining up perfectly there for me, so I just let up a little bit on my clip and brushed it flat, because you'll be a lot happier working with this if it's completely flat, and you'll be able to feel if it's not. So I have 4 corners that I now have to deal with. I'm going to measure from the edge, putting a mark on the edge. Then I'm going to measure in 1 1/4, and I'm going to do that 4 times, but this next time I'm going to use my tape mark just because it's faster. Now the ultimate goal of doing the next method is to fold in the edge nice and evenly and fold out like this, just like this. If you don't have any quilt clips are a great thing to have in your sewing stash. And the interesting thing about quilt clips is they have a flat side and a curved side. The method I'm going to show you is we're going to use that flat side to facilitate folding this neatly. So the first thing we do is we are going to clip this quilt clip on 1 layer of our fabric with the flat side in and the quilt and the mark between the quilt clip and the corner of our fabric. Now we're going to open our fabric up and we're going to fold right along that quilt clip, just like that. You may need to watch this a couple times, but this is a super easy method to do this. Now I have the corner mark that I made right here. As you can see that corner mark, I am going to put a clip so that the flat side is toward me next to the mark, and I am going to put the clip between the fold and the mark. So now there's the fold, there's the mark, and I'm going to fold right along that clip. And then I'm going to give this whole thing a pull, because it will lay down nicely if I give it a pull. And as you can see, with both of those clips on there, I have a perfectly folded, a perfectly even fold. Now I'm going to take both clips off while I'm holding it and clip it shut just like that. Now I'm going to demonstrate that one more time without talking about it. And there we have 2 folded. Now you have to do this twice more at this end. I now have all 4 of my edges clipped. Now this is maybe the most important part of a zipper. We do not want this zipper flip to be on the outside of the bag. So this is the first time we are actually worried about that zipper flip, and we are going to run it a little bit to the inside of this bag. That way when I sew across the end, my zipper will have a flip. That's always important. And I am going to sew at the 1/4 inch mark all the way along right here, across the zipper, all the way to the other side of my bag. And I am going to backstitch this zipper. And there's a trick to sewing the open side of the zipper. The closed side of the zipper, you just sew across, backstitch at the zipper. It's not a big deal. But the front side, your foot is going to tend to push this out and away. We don't want that to happen. So as I am sewing across this, as soon as I hit the zipper tape, I am going to hold these together really tightly as I go through my presser foot. Don't forget to backstitch at the beginning. I am not a huge proponent of backstitching. A lot of people are. I backstitch mostly for the sake of construction I backstitch mostly for the sake of reinforcing. And so I will backstitch at the beginning and the end of the seam because I'm not going to sew anything across that seam. I'm not going to cut it or anything. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to sew a short stitch right here, back and forth a couple of times to reinforce this zipper. In my opinion, I don't want this zipper to undo, because otherwise the flip will come off. So now you've seen that. Now I'm going to do the same thing to this other side, but the other side is much easier. It just goes, it just zooms, no problem. Now I'm going to reinforce that. As you can see, I've stitched a line about 1/8 of an inch. Now I'm going to just cut my zipper straight off. No problems there. No problems there. And then I am going to take my lighter and I am going to melt the tip of my zipper. You don't have to do this, but I don't want this zipper to ravel at all. And typically, I tend to seal with heat anything that I think might ravel, if it's polyester like zippers are. That was the last thing we're going to do with our machine. We are now going to unzip this zipper all the way, and look, I very conveniently have an opening here that allows me to unzip this zipper all the way. I could pull through the opening, but I don't see why, because it's easier to go through the zipper. Now, interestingly, I am not going to clip these corners. The reason why I'm not going to clip these corners is because the only time you have to clip a corner is if you've sewn on both sides of it. So if I've sewn here and sewn here, I will want to clip that corner, but if I sew to the edge, this area is not going to be bulky when I turn it right side out. So I don't need to clip the corner. Then I am going to turn this right side out, run my fingers to the edge, and you see there's this cute little triangle at the edge, and I'm running my finger so that the triangle is nice and tidy. There I have 4 tiny corners. We're going to zip this up. We have our bag done. Now I'm going to show you how to load this bag with your tissues. Now I'm going to teach you how to load this. This is a tissue that has pull up. So I am going to open the edge of it. Pull the tissues out. Then I am going to unzip my pouch. Then I am going to take this sack of tissues and put them carefully into this pouch. And you'll see that this pouch, because it's designed to fit the tissues exactly, fits these tissues really nicely. I'm going to tuck those in, make sure that they're all tidy in there. Then I'm going to zip up the pouch, turn it over, and pull my first tissue out. And there I have my tissues feeding just like you'd expect them to feed.